This is one of the world's most advanced FPV RC cars. In this video, I'm going to show you everything I've done to it, how I set it up, and then we're going to take it out and take it for a spin. Now, ever since I was a little kid and I saw Home Alone 3, I've always wanted an FPV car. Now, in that movie, Kevin McAllister had his own RC car and he put a little camcorder on it and he was able to drive around and look at all the criminals and he was able to jump it and everything. I thought that was the most epic thing I've ever seen in my life, and I've been constantly chasing to get one of those ever since then. I've done many things in order to try and replicate that. I've even got a little receiver pack for my GoPro all the way back in like 2016, but nothing ever really was able to live that fantasy that I've always wanted to have. And I have to say, what I have here in my hands was able to achieve that. Now, to start off, Caddx FPV was very nice enough to send out some of these components for me to review. The first thing we're going to be looking at here is the new GM series gimbal. This is the actual device that the camera connects to in order to get that very smooth video that you will see later on in the video. It's very small size, compact, and can pretty much fit to anything that you have. Next up is going to be the Walksnail Avatar HD Pro Kit, and this thing is loaded with features. It can record up to 4 kilometers, and that's about 2.5 miles. It has 1080p by 120 frames per second compatibility, and then it's also got 32 gigabytes worth of built-in storage in it. Another cool thing is that it's a 160-degree field of view, so that way you're not too narrowed with horse blinds on, so it's going to be great for when you're actually viewing stuff with the goggles. And speaking of goggles, these are the new Walksnail Avatar Goggles L. And again, these are loaded with features, and the main one for me is that it is going to be a 1080 by 60 display, so it's going to be absolutely crystal clear. I'm only used to about 480p, so these are a huge improvement from what I usually have. It's got a 4.5-inch screen, and it's got a built-in 6-axis gyro, so that way when you go ahead and you move it around when using a head tracking device that I'll show you a little bit later on, it's going to be absolutely smooth. And the weight of the system with everything that is going to be included, it comes out to be about 2.7 ounces. And then if you add in your own battery, depending on what size it is, it's probably going to range anywhere between 4 and 6 ounces. To begin the installation of this system, go ahead and remove the 4 Phillips head screws on the back of the camera. From there, you're going to remove the coaxial cable on the back of the camera. It's best to use a small pair of tweezers or a little bit of force with your fingernail to pry that off. This is a very delicate system. As you can see, there's lots of microchips in the back of this board, and that coaxial cable is pretty delicate itself too. So please use caution when installing that. Next, we're going to go over to the GM gimbal, and then we're going to apply that coaxial cable to the spot on the back of the camera that we just took the other cable out from. Go ahead and snap that in, and then in order to secure it, we're going to put it right back into its little nesting position there on the gimbal, and then reinstall it with the same exact 4 Phillips head screws. Now, while I'm doing the installation on this, I do want to go over and stress that you need to make sure that you go ahead and update the firmware on the gimbal, the camera, and the receiver unit itself. I did not do that right away, and I was not able to get power to my gimbal, so please go ahead and make sure that you go to the CaddxFPV website, download the correct files, and then go ahead and transfer those over to your system so that way everything can work nicely. Next up, what we need to do is take the coaxial cable from the gimbal and swap that out for the other coaxial cable on the receiver unit itself. This is just held in by 2 1.5mm screws and nuts on the backside of the plate. Go ahead and take that off, and again, use caution when removing that coaxial cable. Use a pair of pliers or a nail file device to remove that, then go ahead and snap that back into place. Now, this next step is where it gets a little bit tricky. We're going to go ahead and take the 4-pin connector that came in the box. This is the one with the black, white, red, and gray wire coming out of it. You're going to go ahead and plug that into the back of the gimbal, then take the other end with the gray and white wire and go ahead and plug that into the receiver unit itself. Now, this is where I really messed up. That cable that I just showed you right there is the USB-C cable. That is for you to update the firmware on your devices. Do not mess with that. Do not cut it. Do not do what I just did right there. What you should have done is taken the cable that has the black end to it and the 4 wires coming out of it, and then take the black and red wire, go ahead and connect that to a power source as what you've seen right there on the screen. The white and gray wires will not be used. That is only if you are going to connect this to a USB type A device, and then you need to splice all those wires together. I also opted to throw in a fan just because I had an extra port open on my JST connector. For this build, I'm going to be using my Element Enduro Nightwalker. This is going to be a great RC crawler for this application. I went ahead and printed myself a little base plate so that way I can mount everything that I need directly to it. I would recommend doing this and mounting it in the front of the vehicle so that way you can have a full view of your front tires and your bumper. Okay, so I went ahead and got the entire system installed onto my truck. As you can see, I 3D printed this little base right here. Then I attached the gimbal and then also the receiver in the back right there. I ended up putting some heat shrink on my antennas right here so that way they can stay in a vertical position because they don't have a lot of retention in the actual cable itself, so they would flop around. But I ended up going ahead and wiring a fan to the receiver right here. This actually operates off of the main power system of the receiver on my truck as well. This does get very hot, so I would recommend putting in a small fan. And then to power this system, I went ahead and ran all the cables down, and I included it to this little receiver battery pack right here. It's a 7.4 volt, 2500 milliamp hour battery, so that should be able to give us plenty of runtime. Now there's only one thing left to do. Take it out and see how it performs. Okay, we're down here at the park and we're going to go ahead and try this out. Now, range on this system is going to be about 4 kilometers or about 2.5 miles. You're actually probably going to be more limited by your transmitter and receiver on your RC car rather than that of the transmitter and receiver of the FPV system. Now, 4 kilometers, that's if you have a clear line of sight, if you're flying a plane. Obviously, that's going to be reduced if you have any interference between you and the actual car itself. But regardless, this is going to go a lot further than what you're ever probably going to use it for. If you need to re-hone your gimbal, go ahead and press the back button 3 times really fast. It's going to re-hone it and put it right back to its normal state. The cool thing about this is that you can actually look for vehicles as you're driving. Now the main thing about this is that with that gimbal is that, as you can see, I'm going over pretty rough terrain and the image is absolutely smooth on it. Now if there was no gimbal whatsoever on this, it would be so choppy. Watch out for that truck. Then also too, with the weight of this system, you don't have to worry about being too top heavy and worry about falling over. Now let's go ahead and let's do a small range test. Look for any vehicles. And what's pretty cool is that you can actually check for rock clearance too, being able to look down at both your front, left and right tire. No, I just think I just ran over dog poop. So it looks like I'm getting some interference right here at about 133 meters. Obviously that's going to change whether or not you have any obstacles in between you. It's a pretty fair share line of sight that I have with me in the vehicle, and it seems to be doing pretty well. And looking down at the car, you can see just how bouncy it is and how stable the image is. Look for cars. Crossing the street, look both ways. Okay, I've gone ahead and switched locations. Found an area with some rocks, do some rock crawling. Now this is pretty sweet because these are some pretty large rocks. And with the gimbal on here, I mean, it just eats right through them.
You can't even tell you're really going over any large obstacles. And again, you can check for clearance to see where you're at. See, I'm getting hung up right there. I mean, this is just absolutely awesome. And there you have it, guys. If you guys want to pick one of these systems up for yourself, I'll go ahead and leave a link to everything down in the description box below. I highly recommend getting this if you guys are a hobby enthusiast or if you have a love for RC cars, especially if you have an RC crawler. This thing is going to take it to the absolute next level. Big thank you to Caddx FPV for sending this system out to me for me to review and to play with. I'm definitely going to be trying out more of their products in the future, and I hope you guys have a great one, and be sure to like and subscribe to my channel, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.